Hey everyone, and welcome to Almost Cancelled. I am Peter, that is Connor, and we are going to talk about Better Call Saul, Season 5, Episode 10. It is called Something Unforgivable. So, full spoilers for the episode as always. We were terrified by the title of this episode when we read it last week, because we assumed that Saul was going to do something unforgivable to Kim, and that was what. And that's not to say that what actually was. I'd say I know it'd been teased in this. It's not like it happens in this episode. There's just a tease of what the something unforgivable could end up being if it actually happens in season 6. But I'm not saying that that isn't equally terrifying for different reasons, because it is. But
it is, yeah.
But it wasn't exactly what we jumped to in our minds.
An explosive end to the season for that side of things.
No. The explosive end was definitely the Lalo and Nacho stuff. That was the. Yeah. The climactic. Now, don't get me wrong, I do think that last week's episode was like top 3 of the entire show. There was no way this week's was going to be equal to it. It was just impossible. But so I'll get that out of the way first. Not as good as last week's. That's not really much of a slight though. It's just there's the fact that
there's a lot to like in this episode. Anytime it does a close up on Kim's face is nearly as good as last episode.
Almost any time. Even every time. Because early on, because it starts with sort of the other side of Lalo leaving, right, where it's just this Kim and Mike in the Kim and Saul in the apartment, and they're like looking through the peephole, slowly locking the door, checking out the window, watching him drive away, and Saul very quickly, he goes to the phone and says, "Did you hear all that?" He's like, "Yeah." He's like, "What do I do now?" We'll see. Hangs up. And Kim naturally is like, "Who is that?" And he immediately just comes clean about everything that he was lying about last episode. He just everything. He's like
way too shook up to even consider lying right now.
He's like, "No, I got ambushed. This guy was on the phone to save me. I can't tell you who he is because that's not my secret or whatever." But like, so he opens up with everything, and they go to a hotel to feel safer. He points out that more people around's better. We don't want some little dingy motel. We want something that it's a big proper hotel. And they go in, and obviously he's shook up. He's sitting on the edge of the bed. She's also shaken up and worried. But even in this opening section of the episode, like she seemed to just be able to go to bed and said good night as if it hadn't affected her as much as him, and that really threw me. It was like,
yeah, it becomes clear over the episode that it's definitely a bit of a case of denial.
Yeah.
But it does seem weird at first, where she's just like taking this very naturally in comparison. After that very, very opening moment of her looking at the people, there she's clearly still terrified. But as soon as she's out the house, she feels more relaxed.
I hate to say it, but The fact that they went through that and came out the other end, like, is this almost like when he showed her how to con people for the first time, where she's not liked it necessarily, I'm not going as far as say he's liked it, but the thrill of surviving is maybe something that actually isn't something she hates?
It's possible. I think there's a moment later on where when Jimmy says to her, no, it's safe, it's being dealt with, she just completely slumps into the chair. She relaxes in a way that I don't think she'd even realize she was tense.
That's fair.
Which makes me feel it was more of a denial coping thing rather than actually enjoyed it in any way.
Yeah, no, that's fair. But the reason why I say that, though, because her story this episode, the story of Saul and Kim this episode, and I did not see this coming. If you'd asked me in the finale last season, when we were talking about last season's finale, if you'd said to me that basically we're going to end season 5 with Kim doing the Better Call Saul moment, because that's essentially what happens at the end of the episode. She does finger guns as if it's like, it's all good. It's all good, man. Yeah. And walks on, and he's sitting there like, what have I done?
I've created a monster.
What have I done? And I think it goes to something I said like halfway through the season. I don't know what episode I brought this up in first, but the notion that maybe the end of their story would be that Saul would actually to realize what he's doing to her and make the choice of leaving her to save her from himself, because he knows what he's turning her into, and that's the sort of more heroic choice for him to make, right? And
there's definitely a lot of that implication in this episode. There's one point where I straight up thought he was going to break up with her there and then.
Yeah, there's a moment where she insists on going to work. He tries to talk her out of it, and she says, "Look, I'm going to a courthouse. It's full of police. It's right next to the police station. It's 3 blocks away. Like, this is, if there's any place that's safe to go right now, that's the place to go, right? And when she comes back after a day, we'll talk about what happened during the day. She comes in and he's sitting there at the edge of the bed, and he went on and spoke to Mike. More, we'll talk about that in a second as well. But she comes in and he's sitting at the edge of he's actually lying down. He sits up, but he's sitting at the edge of the bed, and he basically says, "Look, what we went through. Am I good for you?" That's the line he used. Am I good for you?
Yeah.
And she sort of laughs it off and says, "Yeah, you crossed the line, but this is never going to happen again." In fact, hell, even earlier on in the episode, there's even a similar moment. Like that, but he sort of has this moment, because the first time she says something to that effect, this is you can't do this again. He kind of, his delivery, Odenkirk's delivery of the response where he goes yeah, is very kind of it's very knowing, where he's like I don't want this to happen again. Because we saw what this put him through. He did not enjoy this experience. This is not something he liked, but there's almost an acceptance to himself where he got himself into this, and he's not convinced that he won't do it again, even if he doesn't mean to. He's not convinced that the way he lives his life and the way he does things just won't lead to this again. And it's this second time here when he says, "But you're not going to do it again." He doesn't actually give her a straight answer. He kind of looks down and it's like he's accepted that ultimately this is going to happen again, or something similar will happen. And there's a moment where it cuts to a shot where he's got two bags at the bottom of the bed. Now, don't get me wrong, they're supposed to be going home from the hotel, so obviously they have bags packed. But the visual of him sitting there after that moment with those two bags at his feet, it kind of felt like he was about to just leave her and go out the door.
It did. It's like a bag of each of their stuff, and he's put them all separate. And which again is a little bit unusual, I'd say, at that point, where okay, you're going back to the same house, just pack it all in whatever fashion works.
But what's beautiful about this moment though is that she immediately sees he's upset, sees that he's heading a certain way with this conversation, and she immediately sort of starts doing what he was doing earlier on before she left for work, which is, "Oh hey, we've not even tried room service, we've paid for the night already, we might as well stay. What about the spa?" And she starts suggesting all these little things. And Joe, what really hit me during this little moment
was it the truffle salt?
No, it was that she turned into Saul for this scene. He was the one who was having doubts. If you think about how many scenes we've had in the show where she's standing there or sitting there and just being in shock about what situation they're in, or he's trying to convince her that they should open a law practice together, or they should move in together, or they should do this, or they should do that, and he immediately starts talking about all these little things they can do, all these little things they'll be allowed to do if they go through with what he's suggesting. And it felt like this moment here was Kim doing the same thing, where she almost could feel the writing on the wall, and she's the one desperately clinging on to the relationship. And keep in mind, this comes after her meeting with Hamlin, which that in and of itself is Hamlin, when he finds out that she quit her job and so on, he takes her aside and says, "Hey, Jimmy did this. He did the bowling balls, he did the prostitutes," and he opens it with saying, "I need to tell you something about Jimmy. This is kind of serious." And at the end of when he tells her everything about those two things, she just bursts out laughing. He's like, "That's it." And to use the word you were using earlier, this felt like some sort of weird denial of "Oh, I thought it was going to be weird." It's almost as if the bar's been moved so low for Jimmy at this point that this was "Oh, this doesn't even register. You have no idea what he put me through in the last 48 hours.
Do you know what, there's been a fan theory going around for about half of this season, maybe more.
Mm-hmm.
Or at least that's when I saw it. About Kim getting together with Hamlin and she's going to leave Jimmy for Hamlin.
Oh,
and
right.
The whole time we're like, I don't see it. This show, maybe it could have convinced me, and maybe it still can. But right now, I'm like,
I feel like this scene was also a meta thing of just pointing a gun right at that theory, and because everything about it, where afterwards we're actually having the room service together after she's kind of talked about having food. And she says, "Oh, Hamlin said all this stuff, and you didn't tell me about the bowling balls." And she's kind of joking as she does it. And then she says, I think he actually thinks he's going to ride in on a white horse and save me from you. He loves himself. It really felt like there were. I mean, maybe she will still revert. I mean, that could be a character beat, but at least right now.
Yeah, I'm not feeling that. And the show, if any show can convince me over the case of 13 episodes, then this will be the one to do it. But I don't see it right now. Just to remind that scene we were talking about where, Kim is essentially Jimmy.
Mm-hmm.
I loved the touch on that where, or I should say she was Saul specifically. The lighting, because I'm sure we've probably spoken about it before, but, Saul's color is yellow.
Mm-hmm.
And they use that repeatedly, but she was bathed in yellow light as she was doing that when she was sat over, reading the stuff off the menu and stuff like that.
Yeah, it's just like she's
really clear.
She's clinging on, and even more so when they're actually having, because he's still kind of down while they're having food. He's not really into it, and he's almost horrified, because it's kind of like what I was saying earlier about him realizing that he's kind of turning her into him. And while this might, like in a weird way, if you'd went back to Jimmy 2 years ago and said, hey, or showed him some of this and said, hey, she's going to be more like you and accept you for who you are, I think that'd have sounded quite appealing to him. But he's in this moment, he's looking at this going, I'm ruining who she is. I'm bringing her down to my level. It's kind of what we've said a lot over the last few seasons of the show.
Also the fact that she's just a better lawyer than he is. Mm-hmm. And her with those powers would be terrifying.
Yeah, because once he kind of fesses up to these jokes with the prostitutes and the bowling balls. I mean, the bowling balls was outright. I mean, I think the prostitutes was a good actual prank. I mean, it felt mean, but I would still classify it as a prank, and that technically, it's a bit of a scene.
His reputation, sure, and it looked uncomfortable, but it didn't physically damage anything.
Yeah, it wasn't actually. Whereas the car was outright destroying proper. Like that was a complete illegal act. Which, I mean, Hamlin, if he really wanted to pursue it, could probably get him charged for it.
Probably easily.
Yeah. So, but Kim immediately says, "Well, what's next?" And this is the thing. All season with Saul, we've been saying that he's been cruel to Hamlin, that he's been going too far, that he feels vindictive. And yet, somehow, within the space of like 10 seconds, this show made me think Kim is worse than he is. At least right now, in the sense that the way she's thinking, that she wants to go further, that she wants to... Because this is the beauty of it, is that Hamlin upset Saul by reminding Saul of everyone that he came from, and trying to like offer him this job as if it was a handout. He's essentially done the same thing to Kim. Kim has felt insulted by Hamlin thinking he needs to save her, right? Not in the same way, not by offering a job, but essentially the same thing's happened to Kim, and she's reacting in the same way, maybe turned up a little bit, but in the same way. And it's kind of scary. And I think the beauty of this scene is that there's never a moment where Jimmy's entertaining it. There's never a moment where, I mean, sure, he goes along with the jokes and he keeps suggesting things because they're bonding, but as soon as she starts doing this stuff, the look of horror on his face is he's kind of like realizing who she is, and basically he goes along with it because he thinks she's just joking, and that's kind of the point later is like afterwards, because they have sex, they're still like bouncing back ideas about what to do, and then she eventually comes up with the biggie, right? The like something really big,
the something unforgivable,
which is what Jimmy calls it. That Saul calls it something unforgivable, like because she says, "Oh, something really bad that would." Make him have to lose the sandpaper case. Because, Saul's not been paid for that yet. That was a big plot back in season 2 and 3. And it's still, the money's still kind of like eventually coming for it, but all this time. Yeah. And to get it all thrown out so everyone would settle quickly, she's like, what if he had to, like give up his job? And what if he'd have to do this and that? And Saul's like, yeah, but like, it'd have to be something huge. And she's like, yeah, like malpractice. Or like, and I'm like, you're going to nuke his career. You're going to actually nuke his professional life if you do this, Kim.
Yeah, and Jimmy kind of gets at that. He talks about how he could get disbarred. He'll never practice law again. And she's like, so what?
And actually, just a little detail here that I love is that something that actually essentially happened to him, or to Saul. Like
he
Saul
understands that impotence of it.
He experienced that, and it wasn't forever, but it could have been forever. Like he didn't know for sure if he was going to get his license back. If he's always
exactly.
So. I love that detail of it. This like he really understood how personal that felt. But Kim's like,
but she's like, well, if we get the money, I can open up a little practice and do pro bono stuff for the people who need it, and I can help so many people. Who gives a shit about Hamlin's career?
Yeah, it's one person, and again, this is logic that Saul has used in some fashion before, right? Where he'll say, well, yeah, okay, one person will get a little hurt, but think of all the good that it'll do instead. Like he always justifies it, and it feels like she's doing this again, but to a degree that. And it's almost like he's put her in a position where she's so desperate that she has to kind of become a better version of Saul. And by better, I don't mean a better person. I mean a more extreme version of Saul.
A more successful?
Because
there's the moment where they start talking about Sandpiper, and he goes, I tried that already. She goes, yeah, but you didn't go by the right way. Like she's like, I could have won that. I could have done this, sorted this out.
Yeah. I mean, hell, even that realization from Saul, if that's part of it, where he's like, okay, I'm a scummy asshole, and I do my scummy asshole things, and I'm reasonably good at it, and I have hurt some people, but I do have some moral lines that I try not to cross. I think the realization that his tactics in the hands of someone who is more successful than him. Which, and also, my favorite line of the episode we've kind of skipped over that we have to go back and talk about here. So when Hamlin's talking to Kim, and Kim says, "Look, you don't know Jimmy. Like, don't you? How dare you try to whatever?" Right? She sort of fights back at him, and just before Hamlin walks away, he says, "No, do you know who knew Jimmy? Chuck." And he just walks out. That line. Sometimes this show, like, you can see things coming quite far away because they're well plotted, and it really. Not this is something you could have or couldn't have predicted, but this was such a snipe of a line. But it was kind of like, before he finished his sentence, you knew exactly what Naomi was going to say, because it made so much dramatic sense and so much dramatic weight. Because
it was the only person it could have been that would have had any sort of impact. And it still has so much impact, regardless of the fact that you know just before it's happened.
It's this brutal idea, because we were so much on Saul's side, right? For so much, and I'm actually just realizing something here. Part of the genius of the show, in a sense, is that they kind of like. Kim kind of has become the audience in a way that we've swapped places with her, because back in the start of the show we were always kind of rooting for Saul, because Saul always felt hard done by Chuck, and we always wanted to like sort of root for him over Chuck. And we had kind of that moment like after like everything that happened with Chuck, where, you know, the ex-wife said, you know, he's mentally ill, what's your excuse? And we praised that moment, because it was a really good moment of like, you know what, she's kind of got a point. Like, we've been kind of like villainizing this guy.
Reconsider so much.
And I felt like this moment kind of went further than that, and kind of pointed out that, yeah, maybe the way Chuck did treat Saul, or the way that he tried to stop him from having X amount of power, to stop him from being that, you know, a lawyer in the law firm, maybe it's because he just understood who Saul is, and that he was never going to. And don't get me wrong, the issue there is the idea of self-fulfillment. If Chuck could guide him, you know, and that was something we brought up a lot back in those seasons.
Yeah, it's all his actual methods of the way he went about it were clearly terrible, but maybe the idea was coming from the right place. And I suspect maybe what you're getting at here is, does Jimmy kind of have to become Kim's Chuck?
Like, yeah, that's kind of what I'm getting at. And also just the idea that Hamlin, because Hamlin was never against Saul, as we kind of found out over the course, but it's almost like Hamlin, in his recent, you know, he's had a lot of screen time this season, but just the experiences that he's had this season or so has kind of made him realize what Chuck knew about him, and he's kind of understood, you know, after the fact, why Chuck treated him the way he did.
Was like this, yeah.
Yeah, and again, Chuck maybe didn't do good, and hell, sometimes Saul's heart is in the right place, and he just goes about it in an awful way. So that's maybe something that runs in the family. Like, maybe that's just something to share in a weird way. So. Yeah, I think the idea of like Kim's choice and of you know, because this is something that Kevin said to her, you know, after the whole, you know, big meeting with Jimmy, you know, in the when he made his big pitch and the advert and all that, right? You know, you can do better than this guy, blah blah. And then you have Hamlin essentially kind of saying, "I need to tell you about him. Like, you need to know this." It's almost like her big life choice that she's made by being with him. It keeps being questioned, and there's almost this pride thing of proving that she's not made a mistake.
No, that makes sense.
So I think that's in there too. All this is wonderful, and all builds up to that moment where you know, they're having ice cream. Even just the little moment where she's getting the ice cream for him, right? And oh yes, is there any vanilla? We have to ask that question. That's important. It's been a lot of times to see a tray of ice cream flavors like this, but
yeah.
But he you know, he's over the bed. She's like, "Hey Joe, what do you want?" And he's like, "Oh, one of everything." And then after she says, "Actually, no, I'll leave out the mint chocolate chip." And she's already put it on the bowl, and she just kind of scrapes it off. And it's not actually. It's not a big deal on its own. Like, in a vacuum, this is a fine moment. Okay, she already put it on, big deal. Whatever.
Sure, yeah.
Yeah. But in the context of the themes of what we're talking about here, this idea that she just scraped it off and just, it'll be fine. Get away with it.
I think it's worth noting as well, mint chocolate chip was the flavour of ice cream that that he dropped back near the start of the season when he got picked up by Lalo and that.
Yeah, that's a nice touch.
Because that was that dramatic ending of that episode, and I think it opened the next one as well.
Yeah, which actually, again, thematically, that goes bigger because it represents him. If the mint chocolate chips what he had when he thought he was on top of the world and think, I can be this criminal lawyer and I'm going to be great at it, and then it got him into that bother. The idea of him leaving the mint chocolate chip behind intentionally is him saying, I don't want to be that, exactly, at least not the friend of the cartel levels.
Maybe what I would have said, I think I'd read it slightly differently, in that the mint chocolate chip was before he would have considered himself properly in the game, right? where he was at a normal Saul level of what he was, and he was, okay, he's happy, this is his life, he's content, and then he had to drop the ice cream when he got dragged off into that world. I think this comes back to the acceptance that we were talking about earlier, where okay, the mint chocolate chip, that's past.
Oh yeah, sure. I mean, you could read that either way. I mean, it's such a little thing in the context of the episode.
I'm not going to go out and say, "Oh, I'm right and you're wrong." It's just okay, I read it differently, but I mean, it's a tiny little moment, really.
Yeah, but I honestly, the more interesting thing for me is that Kim's side of it, where she just kind of scripts it off because
I love both elements.
That'll do. And she's like, "I'm going for a shower, so I'll have to go in the morning," and he's like, "Okay, you were just joking about all that harmless stuff, right? Just this is the silly joke." And she does the finger guns, and it's such a picture perfect flip around from last season's ending.
Every time it does a close up on her face, this is what I was getting at. Around this area of the episode when she's making these really serious insinuations about what she could do to Howard, and then she just stops and her face softens a little bit. It's a little bit of a smile, and it's like, "Are you joking or are you actually evil? I don't know anymore."
No, I love this. I love this idea that he is aware of what he's done to her, and that him saying "Am I bad for you?" Like, I think that's going to be a big theme for him next season, and I really can't say enough just how much because obviously Chuck was such a huge thing for 3 seasons of the show, and we said that his presence was still felt afterwards, and it was, but I love that we've had enough time now that it's felt, because season 4 was still a lot about the aftermath of it, but season 5 has mostly he's not been mentioned because it's been enough time and we're doing other things.
Just 2 or 3 times where you've not been thinking about Chuck the whole time. Sure, I think we spoke about maybe 3 or 4 episodes ago how his presence is still there in an indirect way, but then every so often he's mentioned, and it's just bam, and it hits so hard.
Yeah, that line hit, and it hit in a way that it felt so earned. It's just the long-term storytelling paying off in ways that most shows can only dream of, and
it really is.
Yeah, beautiful moment. Everything with that I loved. So we'll see what happens with those two next season. I mean,
there was a moment a couple of episodes ago, maybe it was last episode, when Kim quit her job. Was that last episode? God, so much happened last episode.
Yeah, it was last episode. I was second guess if it was the one before, but it couldn't have been because that was the desert one.
We didn't talk about it, but I think in hindsight, I want to mention it because of where Kim's going on this path, where she's becoming more Saul-esque. Where the one thing she goes back into her office and takes is the bottle lid that she keeps in her drawer, and it was the bottle lid from, I don't know if it's that exact bottle, but it's the tequila that her and Jimmy were drinking. That first time that he brought her into the scams, and it's like, okay, and that was the one thing she took away from that office that she wanted to keep, and keep personal rather than just pack it in with all the other belongings. I didn't think too much of it at the time, but now seeing this here where she's going, I think it's really notable that she did that before the stuff with Lalo really shook her up at the end of last episode, because this was maybe not on her mind as directly. But I think it was showing that she was kind of heading in that direction.
Yeah. Honestly, I'm half expecting next season to be called Better Call Sally, to be a kind of a flip of expectations.
I'd watch that show.
So now we have Nacho and Lalo, and they're in Mexico. Nacho meets the Don. Very tense because Lalo's like, oh yeah, if you like you, you'll get promoted in the in the business, and you'll be a Salamanca and all this. He's like, well, if he doesn't like me, you'll be fine. Let's just talk about that. And so much of it's sort of making Gussie's man look a bit shit.
I love this whole bit of just how smooth Lalo looks compared to everyone else. We've talked about this before, how he's kind of the soul of the evil side. The way he's smooth and charms everyone. Just when he walks in, the way he stops and talks to everyone, it really reminds me of when Saul kind of walks through the courtroom and and kind of stops. And
it's kind of 50-50 because I think he's got the mind of Mike. The way he figures things out is very Mike-like.
Oh yeah. I just mean in terms of just the way he's charming, and he kind of sees through a lot of the bullshit. I think that's the sort of charm that when Saul is putting on his act, very much feels like this.
Yeah. So basically, Mike is like, hey, yeah, he's with him, and Gus is like, oh, we've got a man on the inside, because it's like, oh, the assassination, which they've never actually outright said that's what they're doing, even though it's kind of been obvious all season. It has to be building to killing Lalo, right? It all has to be building to that. And it's Lalo at his own compound. He's got he's got a lot of security. He's got some guys with guns, and he's got a big wall with barbed wire at the top. You know, it's proper fortified. As much as a house, as much as a house can be. And he, you know, makes a point. We get to meet, like, you know, the family who lives there with him, and, like, you know, the old lady who cooks, and the, you know, all these various people, enough to make them feel a bit human. And Natural is introduced to them all. And Natural gets a phone call saying, hey, look, it's 3 a.m. tonight, you know, make sure this gate at the back's opened, kind of thing. And Natural actually...
And get yourself out.
Yeah, and get as far away as possible. But Natural does say, hey, like, you're just going to kill him, right? Like, there's, like, some innocent people here who don't need to die.
So, you know, keep it clean. You know, there's gunmen, there's like 7 of them. You know, sure, I think he thinks they're fair game because, you know, that's their jobs. But the cook and such, you know, they're innocent. There's no reason that they should be involved in this. Just, you know, let them go.
But of course, when we do see it later, we see that they're all dead. Like, everyone's murdered. Yeah. So this, and there's a meeting with Natural and the Don as well, specifically, where Natural has to kind of convince him that he's got plans. And he wants to rise up in the Salamanca world and
turn the biker gangs against each other and get new territory.
Yeah. And that scene was okay. I thought it was really well performed. I thought the actual stuff that Natural was suggesting felt just kind of out of nowhere. What's this? What?
I think it is out of nowhere. I think that's kind of the point, because as far as in his head, he's been planning to get out, and this is it. And then all of a sudden, he's got the Don there being like, right, what are your plans? And he knows it's convince him or die, and he's just coming up with anything off the top of his head. I
suppose in that sense it's actually quite good, because it does just feel like he's pulling it out of his ass, and it feels so baseless. I guess the only critique then at that point would be why the Don buys it, because I didn't buy it. I
don't think the Don does. I think because and I don't mean that in a way of he thinks that he's, you know, shitting him or being an inside man or anything like that. I think it's more just he knows Nacho was completely unprepared for this. He knows he's not been given any warning, and he's like, you know, see what can you come up with on the spot, almost like, you know. I think the more telling question isn't, you know, oh, what are your plans for the business? I don't think he cares about that. I think that'll come with time. It's the question which says, what do you want? Yeah, I think that's the one that matters.
And Mike's try to stick up for Nacho again, try to convince Gus, like, hey, he's earned some consideration of, like, you know, having some help or getting out of the game. Like, he's earned that by everything he's done. And it doesn't look good for him. We'll get to why in a minute. I do want to briefly mention Mike's other scene with Saul, partly because I thought it was really funny the way Saul was kind of like alternating between chapping and ringing the doorbell. He was sort of doing it in rhythm at one point, and that was really making me laugh.
Yeah, it was because obviously doorbells have the ding and the dong, you know, and it was always the knock with the dong. I know, don't say a word.
Cara was talking about dong this episode. I just want everyone to know that Cara's got dong on the mind. And Mike shows up, and I was thinking the whole time, he's not even in. Saul, what are you doing? Yeah, he's not there.
It was so, especially when he was looking through the window and we could see it. I'm like, can he see how empty this clearly is, or is he just being a fool?
And Mike obviously won't tell him everything, but it's not until Saul actually says if anything happens to her, again, it's about Kim, right? It's about feeling that she's safe rather than feeling about yourself being safe. And it's when he mentions that where Mike finally kind of, you know, gives in a little bit and says, okay, look, all I'll tell you is that Lalo's dying tonight, and that's all you need to know. It's enough to know you're going to be safe, that she's going to be safe, right? That's essentially the idea. Of course, we see that it doesn't go to plan, but at least in the moment, that seems like a fine idea.
Yeah.
So I wanted to mention that, because I thought it was, again, a really well-performed scene, which obviously propels a lot of what Saul does with Kim. But so yeah, the big stuff at Lalo's place, though, is Natural trying to, like, open this door, only to find that Lalo's sitting outside at 3 a.m. because he's a night owl by a fireplace, and he invites Natural to sit down and have a drink, and, you know, Natural has to try and think of a way to get him to leave so he can go over there and open that door, open that gate, and he asks for other stuff. When he goes in to get the other stuff, he wants some harder booze. He intentionally sets a fire, basically.
Yeah, just an oil in the pan, just enough to smoke it. to make it look like it's really bad.
Yeah, make it look bad. Because he pours like there was almost like a satisfaction of just seeing someone get to pour that much oil in a pan, because you obviously only put like so much in. There's something satisfying just how much him just goo it out and just having this puddle of oil just rise.
Yeah.
So it does work. Lalo goes off yelling that one of the gunmen have set fire to his kitchen.
It was that same one that was at the start when he was introducing them.
Yeah.
He's like, oh, they're all nice guys or whatever. So this guy, he's like, this little shit needs to go get my luggage. Clearly doesn't like this guy.
But as soon as Nacho, Joe, I loved about this. I loved that it wasn't like a, when are they going to appear thing. As soon as Nacho opens the gate, this like team all en masse. We don't even see this till later, but they've all got their scarves or whatever they are all like taped or they're glued to their face.
Yeah.
But like, yeah, it's like this team. They're waiting. They were waiting for that door to open. They're just right there because I could be wrong, but I think that either it cut or the music like completely changed drastically as soon as that door opened. Because as soon as we saw them, it felt like the music just dropped out.
Yeah, it definitely completely changed there.
Yeah. So it may still technically be music after, it may not have went silent, but it was definitely like a big change from like the loud music it was doing to like just.
Yeah, the tension definitely dropped immediately, and I don't know if it cut completely because I know there was music just a couple of seconds later when they come in and Nacho goes out and there's a gorgeous shot of just Nacho's shadow. Looking, and I know there's music over that for sure. Yeah,
and he bolts it. Like Lalo gets lucky because the henchman he doesn't like is standing in front of him and he sees one of the gunmen, so he uses him as a shield. And then he has to he uses the pan with the oil in it, it's still really warm obviously, in the face, and he kills one of the gunmen. And it's like, okay, and I'm sitting here thinking, from a plot perspective, it makes sense that Lalo survives this, because otherwise, what's season 6, right?
I think
for him,
even aside from that, there's that one line in Breaking Bad that is inspired Lalo, which means he has to, because that one line, did Lalo send you? As of right now, Jimmy wouldn't be worried because as far as he's concerned, Lalo's dead tonight.
Only because Mike told him it was supposed to happen. If he'd never told him, it would have been 50-50.
I agree with that, but that one little bit means that no, Lalo lives.
Yeah. So, and he has like a secret getaway. He's got like his bathtub like rises up. It's proper Bruce Wayne shit.
I did enjoy that. Is a proper escape tunnel.
Yeah, and it had lights all the way up so you could see what he was doing. The thought it went into this, but I also liked that it wasn't super high tech. It was a simple mechanism and just lifting it up. It was just it wasn't anything super fancy.
Just all like a hinge, basically.
Yeah, but it was like something that he put effort into. And he gets out and he comes back and he sort of, and I love this. This is the intelligence of him. Is he almost like shuts the bathtub behind him and he goes, no. If I leave this, they'll use this as a focal point and I can, sneak up behind him.
Yeah, it was fantastic, and I loved the camera when he was crawling through it with the camera just in front of him and just his face. He looked scared, but like he had a plan. Like, he wasn't taking this lightly.
But my favorite moment, well, both my favorite and scariest moment of this is when he looks over and sees the glasses on the table by the fireplace, because and obviously he's been too busy surviving and fighting and whatever to think about it so far, right? He's not had time, but he's down to the last gunman. He's killed the rest very brutally. I love just because there's two of them in the tunnel crawling to see where it goes, and he just like pokes his head in with a machine gun and just sprays. Yeah, as happy as he can, but he's got the guy. He's saying call them and tell him it's done. He wants them to think he's dead so he can make a surprise attack, presumably, because he assumes it's Gus. So the guy's like, oh, we don't know who hired us. It was a middleman, and he's like, it's okay, I know who hired you. But he looks over and he sees the glasses, and it's like, and your heart sinks because you're like, okay, Nacho did technically do this to him, but I'm like, Nacho, like, he wants out. He's been wanting out for a while. He was forced to do this. Damn it!
I know, it's so bad, and he'll feel quite personally betrayed as well, given that he's just shown him his trust. He's like, you'll be one step closer to being a Salamanca, essentially.
I mean, hell, he said that right before this happened. That was literally in the fireplace. Yeah. Actually, it's weird to have this in anything, but I do have a favorite sound effect, which is right at the end. As he was walking away from his house, the sound of like walking on the gravel is like turned up to almost to like a beat of a music. And it's like sort of drowns everything out as he's walking off, and that's kind of the cut to black. Like, see you next season.
It's So there's a filter on everything else as well. There's like it's a look. No, it's a low pass filter, and it's all this stuff where it's just okay. You just get this thud and then kind of a bit of noise.
Yeah, but it sounds great. It sounds like a sort of it sounds like a suspense thing. It sounds like we're building to something. Like his sights are set on like Nacho, and he's going to go for revenge. Like this is. It feels. Joe, it's actually really reminiscent in a lot of ways to the ending of a season of another show, which I won't spoil because it's a pretty big moment later in this show. You've not seen it.
Okay. I'm there racking my brains, going, do I know what this is?
But just in the sense that the final of a season ends with one of the characters walking past the camera with the intent of murdering someone for what they did. Like, it's very similar to this. Didn't have the sound effect of this or anything like that, but it reminded me of that. But the sound of that, the loud footsteps in the gravel, distorted, sounding like it felt kind of like it's a sound effect they often, or an effect they often use when people like there's either just been like a flashbang or something, and they can kind of hear their voices really loud in their own head. It's kind of almost like that, except it's the sound of someone's footsteps.
Yeah, that's good. Honestly, my only problem, I use that word lightly here, because that sounds more severe than I want it to. It is like a extremely small critique, is I would have swapped these final two scenes around. You know, this
you would have ended on Saul and Kim.
Yeah, just that, because it's that shot. I thought it was going to cut on this shot, and the only reason it didn't is because obviously we had this Lalo bit to do. Was it was Saul's face just on him sat on the bed after Kim's done the finger guns, and Saul's face is just there, and I'm like, that's the moment I'd want to end on. As much as I see why you do this,
this is tough because I see why you want it this way. I do, partly because not only be mirroring last season, to have it be the final shot again would especially mirror it. I'd feel like we've done it completely. But at the same time, the idea of leaving it off in this place where all season Lalo's been suspecting things and like almost about to snap, and leaving it on the moment where no, he is now snapping because he now knows for sure.
No, I get it. Dramatically speaking, that is technically the bigger beat. It's got this, tension and fear instilled into it automatically. I think I'd have preferred to end on the character beat of the horror of Jimmy's face, of like what is going on. But again, really, like, problem was a strong word to use because it's not really.
Yeah, you just swapped them around. I would like to add that I think the titles actually get double meaning, because while there's the literal something unforgivable they talk about, I think the actual something unforgivable is actually what Jimmy's realizing he's doing to Kim. I think that's what he is never going to forgive himself for, and I just want to point that out before we wrap up because it feels important.
I mean, it's crazy to say, oh yeah, not as good as last week's episode, and I stand by that. But still a fantastic episode, right?
Oh yeah, that's phenomenal. It's not the first time either that I feel like Saul's had like a pinnacle episode like right before the end of a season. So then the finale itself is kind of downbeat by example. But everything it's setting up here with Saul and Kim is really big. And even though, like, comparative to that scene from the end of last episode, it's just them hanging out in a hotel. It doesn't sound like it's as exciting, but what they're setting up is so big. And from a drama perspective of where we're going with these characters, it's such a huge deal. Yeah. And it feels like the end game. It really feels like we're getting into the final act of the show.
It does, absolutely. Oh man, it's so good.
I
can't believe we're like gonna have to wait till like 2022 to watch more of this.
Yeah, but here's the thing.
It hurts.
Yeah, but here's the thing though. While there's a gap, there's still Saul to look forward to. Once we actually get there, it's only going to be the 12, 13 weeks, depending on how they double up. Maybe the first one.
And it always goes quicker than you expect.
It always goes quick. So
I think the last 2 or 3 seasons they've done the 2-night premieres.
Yeah, so it'll probably be 12 weeks then when it comes. It's 13 episodes, but 12 weeks. But I can also see them doing maybe a double at the end as well, since they've got more episodes for a start, but also because it's the final season. I can see them doing like a big double blowout as well.
Really depends on what they have planned for those last few episodes, doesn't it? They'll know better than us, and I think frankly they'll be given permission to kind of do what they want at this stage.
I mean, hell, it's worth mentioning though. This episode was a full 60 minutes, no ads. This was a full 60 minutes, so
Yeah,
I feel like we could end up with 13 episodes and then the last one could still be 2 hours if they really want to.
it's possible. I mean, the last one was it the last one that was a bit longer as well, and we kind of went,
It
man,
was
that went in so quick.
Yeah, it was almost an hour last week, and this one was a full 60 minutes. Because of last week, I checked just as it was starting. I looked at the time bar, and I was like, oh, it's actually 60 minutes. So AMC are letting them do what they want, basically. And at this point, why wouldn't they? So,
I mean, Breaking Bad kind of made them what they are now, their reputation, I would say.
well, 50, it was that in Mad Men. Mad Men was also a big thing for them.
It was,
at
but
the
I
time.
think the Mad Men has faded in comparison to Breaking Bad.
Oh, I mean, don't get me wrong. I couldn't get into Mad Men. Breaking Bad is one of the best shows of all time. Better Call Saul is one of the best shows of all time. So
I don't really care for Mad Men, but this isn't a slight against Mad Men or the fact that it was incredibly popular at the time. But you ask for a list of the top 10 TV shows of all time right now, and a lot of people will have Breaking Bad on it, like a lot. Whereas, sure, some might have Mad Men. I'm sure some do. But I think the amount significantly is outweighed by the Breaking Bad fan.
Hey, depending on who you're asking, some people are going to have The Walking Dead on the top 10 as well. So I mean,
well, those people don't count.
And they'll probably have Fear the Walking Dead, and then whatever that new one's going to be called, with the younger people.
I can't remember what that one was called.
Legacy of the Walking Dead, I don't know what it's called.
Well, those people are terrible, so they don't count.
Joe, I think I should have done for those shows is that the second one should have been like The Crawling Dead or something like that, and then the third one should be...
I'm sure we've said this before.
They should have changed the adverb.
Yes.
No, that's just a verb. It's not an adverb. It's a verb. No, it's an adverb because you're describing some. Yeah, it's an adverb. I'm right. Spiritualists have had to sit down and define words, but
I'm going to just take your word for it because I don't remember what any of these things are.
Right. Well, walking's a doing thing, so it's a verb, but you're also describing something because you're describing the dead, so it's an adverb. So it's an adjective and a verb. It's an adverb.
I'll take your word for it.
Okay, look, I'm pretty sure I'm right on this, but anyway, cue the comments, tell us how much of an idiot I am. That's fine. Anyway, we were here talking about Better Call Saul, which we did for 99% of this. For some reason, we went into a tangent at the end about The Walking Dead.
Yeah, we had a good, 30, 40 minutes on that?
That was close to 40, yeah. So, yeah, end of the penultimate season. Obviously, we're hyped for the final season whenever they get to make that air it. Because obviously the world's shut down right now, so we'll see.
It will be worth the wait, I'm sure.
Well, on the upside, I mean, maybe let's say Vince and the writing team, because they can work over like Skype or Zoom or whatever, and they can have all the scripts banged out. So maybe because of the big gap where they can't shoot, they'll be more inclined to get shooting quicker once everything's rolling again.
Quite possibly. Depends on everything else they've got a schedule to shoot in, and everything at once is going to be restarting, right?
That is true. That is true.
That's going to be a logistical nightmare for producers.
Yeah, there's going to be a lot of shuffling around. I mean, even movies. I think the Batman got delayed for like 6 months this week, just purely because they were still shooting it and all this started, so they have to just. This is more like a video game delay where they can't finish it in time now. Like they actually have to move the date to finish it.
I think the Batman. I think they'd shot about a third. I think they said, but I mean, that's nowhere near enough.
Yeah, so anyway, that has been Better Call Saul. Do let us know what you thought of this finale in the comments below. This is one of my favourite shows to talk about on this channel, so it is a shame whenever it ends the season. It'll be a crying shame when we get to the end of the show.
On the bright side, when we get to the end of the show, that's when we can start looking at doing a Breaking Bad rewatch, because we never spoke about that.
That is true. We've never done Breaking Bad. Right now on Patreon, we're doing an exclusive already cancelled on 6 Feet Under. And maybe by the time Saul's final season comes around, we'll finish 6 Feet Under and we can go straight into Breaking Bad on Patreon. Maybe that's something we could do. That feels like a wonderful idea.
It does, doesn't it?
Get access to our 6 Feet Under discussions. The second one just went up. $1 a month. That's all you need to do. You get access to those. But anyway, look at that. Patreon.com/MailFuzzTV. Good way to support us. That's one of the things we get. You can also like, subscribe, you can comment, you can rate the podcast on Apple Podcasts, give us 5 stars. All of that does help. But that is us, so thank you very much once again for watching or listening. We always appreciate it. Keep watching TV, guys. And I'm not sure if Kim or Saul had any of this episode, but it might have been on the table. But I'll ask the question anyway. Have you got any vanilla?